Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Superhuman Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Accurso, and I get to spend more time with you once again. I'm so grateful that you've decided to spend a little bit of time with me. And one of my friends who is on the call today is one of the most fascinating people in the world of negotiation. And I think it's so important what you're going to learn from this individual, and how he presents it is so impactful. It's unlike anything I've ever heard in this world before. And his name is Kwame Christian, and he's a business lawyer and a founder of the American Negotiation Institute. He's passionate about teaching entrepreneurs and business professionals the art of negotiation so they can better have deals and advance their careers. He's regularly invited to give negotiation seminars and consults with individuals and companies to create and implement powerful negotiation strategies. He also hosts a podcast called Negotiate Anything. And where I first heard him was on his TED Talk, which is called Finding Confidence in Conflict. And I recommend going on, looking him up, Kwame Christian, and looking up that title, because it's 16 minutes of power, y'all. Like, I've never heard it before, and I've never seen conflict addressed this way. So without further ado, Kwame Christian, thank you so much for coming on the call with me today.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And where are you from, by the way? Where are you located?
I am in beautiful Columbus, Ohio.
All right.
Yeah.
I've never been to Columbus, Ohio. Is there like something there that everybody needs to see? Is there like a trademark of some type in Columbus?
The thing you need to know and see is the Ohio State University. That's where it's located.
Yeah.
I'm a proud triple Buckeye. My wife is a double Buckeye, and we have a son who was born at OSU, and his name is Kai.
Nice. Nice. The whole family set up, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. I would love to start, Kwame, with your story. Like I said in the intro, I heard you on your TED Talk, and you have such a couth and a way of delivering your message in a very profound, impactful, educational way. It doesn't come across threatening. You're just very good. And obviously you've been studying this thing for a while in negotiations, but you're very good at also educating about simple strategies that people can use no matter where they are in life to basically, pull down the defenses of the other person they're talking to, and also allow themselves to be transparent as well. So I'd love to hear your story about how you got to where you are right now and really delving into negotiation strategies.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So my first academic love was psychology, and still is. And I think that helps people to understand the way that I approach this. Because if you just know that I'm a corporate attorney, then you're going to be kind of surprised. It's like, this seems kind of soft. But that's my background, psychology. So I actually wanted to be a clinical psychologist for a long time. And then I decided I wanted to get into policy. So I switched my focus, stayed with the degree in psychology, but then focused on law. So I graduated with a master's of public policy along with my Juris Doctorate. But while I was in law school, I discovered negotiation, and I fell in love immediately because it showed me how you could operationalize psychology for a business or legal purpose. And that's when it became real to me. Psychology was always just fascinating to me, but seeing how it could be implemented realistically in the real world and impacting real people and creating real relationships, that was powerful.
Wow.
And so at Ohio State, they had had negotiation competitions, and I thought that sounded fun. So I'm like, let's play, let's do it. So, my partner and I, we participated in the competition there, and we were fortunate enough to win the competition. And that gave us the opportunity to represent the school at the American Bar Association regional competition in Ottawa, Ontario. And we won that competition as well. And then we made it to the semifinals of the American Bar Association national competition in New Orleans. So after that, I was just hooked, and I wanted to figure out a way that I could utilize what I've learned in these courses and through the time practicing law and in these competitions to better other people, because I realized that often this is something that people struggle with. And I prefer, even though I love doing it, it's fun for me to do it, I prefer teaching and seeing people have have that aha moment. And so that's where the American Negotiation Institute came from, the podcast and the TED Talk.
Wow. And so have you always been good at negotiating, or was there a point in your life where you were rusty at your skills?
Oh, it wasn't even rusty. Rusty would be that was something I would have aspired to when I was younger. The best things about me are learned. And this is no different. And so I was really bad at this. Difficult conversations, persuasion, negotiation. I was a people pleaser, and I didn't want to do anything that could potentially ruffle feathers. So I just ended up going with the flow, even when I didn't agree. And I realized that if I wanted to be a good attorney, if I wanted to be eventually potentially become a politician, by the way, I don't want to do that.
I was going to say, we're going to hold you to that. This podcast is forever, right? It's always online.
Absolutely not. But if I wanted to accomplish these things professionally, I recognized that I would need to become at least willing, even if I don't become comfortable with it, become willing to engage with these difficult conversations, willing to stand up for what I believe in and things I care about, and have these hard conversations. And so that was one of the things that I worked on. And when I realized that this could actually be learned, I looked around me and I saw other people struggling with this, that's where the passion comes from, because I realized, hey, this is something that I struggled with. I realized this was one of the biggest barriers I faced personally and professionally. And it's just humbling now to have the opportunity to help other people who are struggling with the same thing.
Wow. What do you find, because now that you teach hundreds of people all over the world with it in your institute, and, you've been exposed to this for a long time, what do you find are the biggest challenges people have when trying to negotiate? I guess when we talk about negotiation, it can be on any level, right? Relationships, business, all these different types of things. When we're trying to talk with our wives, whatever it might be, what do you find are the biggest challenges people run into when struggling with, how to do it in a polite way, but still stand your ground?
Right. I would say that there are two main challenges. The first challenge is a lack of awareness, and the second challenge is a lack of a willingness to engage. So let's address the first one. The definition that I use for negotiation is any conversation where somebody in the conversation wants something. And I favor this incredibly broad definition of negotiation because it helps you to increase your negotiation recognition. You'll start to see negotiation everywhere. Have you ever had this experience where you buy a car and then you think this car is really special? This is me. This is a Kwame car. And then as you buy this car, you start seeing it everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. And so it's because you've become hyper aware to its existence in your environment. And that's how it is with negotiation. Once you recognize it's a conversation where somebody wants something, you realize you're negotiating every day. You can't avoid it. And you'll also realize that the people with whom we negotiate the most are the people who are closest to us. So that's going to be, like you said, our spouses, our friends, our colleagues at work, our business partners, then our clients. And the typical negotiation that comes to mind when people think about negotiation is something big like the purchase of a house or a car. Those really structured and regimented negotiations are few and far between. It's really these informal negotiations that happen the most often to us. And that's where the real value can be taken. So that's the first thing, increasing awareness. The second thing is anxiety. People are afraid of engaging in conflict. And what I found is that often the best things in our life lie on the other side of a difficult conversation. And if you're unwilling to engage, there's a lot of good things that we are just missing out on because we're not willing to take a shot. And so when I teach, my goal isn't to get too deep into the psychology or too deep into the strategies. I do that. I definitely do that on the podcast, but it always starts with something that's practical, because I realize that sometimes we can get too stuffy and regimented to the point where people aren't willing to take action. And so I want to make sure that every tactic and tool that I give is easily actionable, so that once you're done listening to the podcast or listening to the TED Talk, you know exactly what to do in what situation, so you can actually start to take advantage of these negotiation skills that you've learned.
Interesting. And do you ever recommend people practice? Are there things people can do to practice these things before actually going into the situation and, trying to do it off the cuff?
Absolutely. Practicing is a must. And so people would say to themselves, okay, so what do I do? Do I go to the negotiation court and just take some shots on the, so it's not intuitive. But what I suggest that people do is engage in what I call rejection therapy. And so with rejection therapy, what you're trying to do is you're trying to actually invite rejection by asking for things that you don't think you have any right to get. And so, first of all, this is beneficial because it forces you to become more aware of opportunities to negotiate. So now you're taking advantage of those negotiations, and you are now engaging in a way that causes you to overcome the fear. Because if you're engaging in rejection therapy, that means you're trying to do something like every day or as often as possible to try and flex your negotiation muscles. And the reason I suggest doing this is because it will make you become a little bit more callous and a little bit more comfortable with rejection, because that's the main thing that people are afraid of. Either rejection of the substantive proposal or rejection of themselves. They feel like people are going to say, you know what, I don't want to be Matt's friend anymore. He's being annoying. And that only happens if you do this improperly. And so that's why it's important to negotiate. And so here's an example. What I do, I think it was a couple of years ago, I went to a coffee shop with one of the guys I was mentoring, and it was my birthday. And so when I swiped my card, they said, hey, Kwame, happy birthday. Here's a free pastry. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm here with my mentee. Can he have a free pastry too? And so think about it. He has no right to a pastry. It's not his birthday.
Yeah.
And I already got my pastry. And so she said, well, I need to ask my manager. I was like, it's okay. You can go ahead and ask. And she asked, and then he got the pastry, and it came up on the coupon as a miscellaneous discount.
Interesting. Crazy. Wow.
Yeah. And so the benefit of rejection therapy is there are multiple benefits. First of all, you'll be surprised in those situations. It's like, what? Free calories? I'll take that. You will be surprised at how many things in your life are negotiable. The only way you'd know is if you ask. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even if you get rejected, you win, because you realize there's life after rejection, and it makes you more likely to ask in the next situation. And then, because you've been practicing all these times in these low-level circumstances, when an actual negotiation that matters comes up, you'll be well prepared. You won't have that rust, and you won't be slow to respond because you've been practicing all this time. So rejection therapy is the best way to practice in your everyday life.
Wow, I love that. And I love the context in which you used it. So do you do this a lot, Kwame? You ask these types of questions?
Still.
Okay.
Still. Yeah. Even as a practicing attorney who's negotiating deals all the time, I mediate as well as at the court. So I'm constantly involved in these types of interactions with people. I still use rejection therapy because it keeps me sharp.
Wow. Is there a conflict that you hear about more than others that you feel gives people more anxiety than other negotiations?
I would say it's the interactions with people who are closer to you. So, and that's because there's a lot more to lose. If I go down to the courthouse and I do a bad job as a mediator, well, that sucks. That sucks for everybody involved. But everybody's going to go their own way, If I have a bad negotiation with my wife and I don't handle myself well, I'm going to wake up next to her. I'm going to come back. She's still there. I'm still there. It's like, oh man.
You may not wake up. That's another thing.
Exactly. My wife is a doctor from Akron, so she could kill me with precision.
Oh, absolutely. Don't mess with that.
And so it's in those situations often when you're so close to somebody that you are just too afraid to engage. It's like, you know what? I'm walking on eggshells. I'd rather just deal with this by avoiding the situation and not engage. But the thing is, one of the most important things for people to recognize is that conflict is an opportunity. It's a signal. It's similar to pain. I was reading a book just today where they were talking about a genetic disorder where somebody can't feel pain. It's just complete pain insensitivity. And because these people can't feel pain, if there's something wrong inside of them, they die from things like appendicitis because they don't register that signal. That information doesn't get there. And so similarly, in our life, conflict is a signal of something wrong in our relationship. It might be terrible. It might be something that's just a misunderstanding. But regardless, it's a signal that we need to do some investigation. And that investigation is done through actually having the conversation and engaging in conflict in a meaningful way.
Hey there, superhuman. Dr. Matt here, interrupting this incredible show, and I don't feel guilty one bit. Okay, maybe a tad, because this is your sacred podcast time. I'm about to make your life 10 times easier and way more delicious with 2 hacks I use all the time. I'm actually using them both right now, actually. One is on my finger, and the other is about to go in my belly. I wear a self-quantification ring that helps me track things that are really important for keeping me running superhuman style. Things like sleep, heart rate variability, respiration for relaxing during stressful events like AT&T keeping me on hold for 20 minutes, and even distance for my triathlete beach runs. It's called the Oura Ring, and the best part about it is I don't have to wear toxic, brain-interrupting Bluetooth on me all day like most self-tracking wearables. Oh no. All the technology is packed into one little ring, and it's able to monitor all these cool stats without full-time Bluetooth. Best part is, I wake up, turn Bluetooth on for 5 minutes, and it downloads it to an app on my phone, and I go about my day not having to worry about Bluetooth all over me. One of the great perks about the ring is it's actually cool. It looks good. You know, making a scene in 2017, if you know what I mean. Hope you laughed at that. You can get the free shipping right now on one of these bad boys by going to Oura, OURA.com, picking out your perfect ring, which comes in pure white, stealth black, or the oh so manly matte black. At checkout, type in coupon code ACCURSO, that's like my last name, ACCURSO, ACCURSO, and receive free shipping for a limited time. Now, do you want to know what's in my other hand? The other hack I'm doing is I'm sipping a superhuman protein shake that I've upgraded with proteolytic enzymes called Masszymes. If you want the secret to getting every last drop of nutrients into those shredded muscles, then you need to be taking this stuff. It breaks down my protein shake beforehand and allows my body to triple the results I get from a workout. You can get 10% off at biooptimizers.com. That's BIOPTIMIZERS, biooptimizers.com. And you can type in superhuman10 at checkout. So biooptimizers.com, superhuman10 at checkout for 10% off of any and all of their amazing products. Hey, thanks for letting me interrupt the episode. Now back to the show. Now, it seems to me like timing is a big player in this as well. Like, I mean, are there ways to look for proper timing when it comes to having conversations like this?
It's going to depend on circumstances. You want to try and address it as quickly as practicable. I'll say it that way, because of course, you don't want things to get so out of hand. It's kind of like building a house on a shaky foundation. If you realize that things are out of whack, you should stop.
To put it bluntly, just stop.
Stop. Yeah. But at the same time, sometimes psychologically people aren't ready to engage. For instance, when you sleep, a lot of emotional regulation happens at that time. It might be better for you to address it the next day and just say, hey, I see something might be up. We might be not agreeing on something. Maybe we should chat about this tomorrow. What works for you? Give everybody a time to calm down. Because when it comes to the way you interact, taking it down to the psychobiology of the whole thing, if somebody is feeling the automatic response of fear, fight, flight, or freeze, they're using their limbic system. And that's the part of the brain that is the least developed. It's incapable of reasoning in a meaningful way. And so you might be talking to somebody at a time when they are cognitively unable to process what you're saying to them. And so you want to wait until you come to a point where you believe that they are thinking rationally and using the most evolved part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. When they are thinking rationally, that's when you can actually engage. If not, your goal is to get them to the point of thinking rationally before you engage.
Interesting. Is there body language that you look at that you can share some pointers on? Like if somebody's doing something with their hands or something like that, or their eyes, do you look at those as things as signals to shift direction in the conversation?
Yes-ish.
Okay, yeah. I like that.
Yes-ish, because the first thing that we need to know about body language is the importance of baseline. If you don't have a good baseline on what somebody's body language is, then you can't make any read. And so what I mean by baseline is that there's certain ways, certain bodily idiosyncrasies that people have that might signal a red flag to you, but might just be their normal body language. And so when I mediate, oftentimes the courthouse is cold. And my family's from the Caribbean. We do not like cold.
No cold.
Says the man living in Columbus, Ohio.
Right, exactly.
And so often what happens is, since I'm cold, I have my arms folded and I'm kind of hunched over and I'm looking like a little Kwame pretzel. And what they could read from that is Kwame doesn't like what I'm saying. Kwame is upset, that type of thing. So what I do is I give a disclaimer. I'm like, listen, I'm very cold. Please don't think this body language
I love that. Yep.
But if you don't have that baseline, you wouldn't know, and you might make the wrong read. And another quick note about body language too. Oftentimes we make the mistake of reading body language in isolation. So we might say, oh, I see that she furrowed her eyebrows, or he leaned back at that time, or his foot started to shake at this time. You can't look at these things in isolation because that's not enough. That's not a good enough sample size. When you are trying to read somebody's body language, you need to look for clusters. And those are two pieces of body language that happen within about a 2 or 3 second range. So if somebody were to go from sitting in a normal posture to crossing their arms and furrowing their eyebrows within a 3 second span, then you can make a read by saying they did not like something that was just said. You don't know if they're lying. You don't know what it is. You just know that something happened. And so as the conversation progresses, you can collect more data and start to make more precise reads. But a lot of times with body language, the mistake people make is that they try to read too much from too little.
Yeah. Wow. One thing that comes up a lot in my circles, just being entrepreneur executive circles, is confrontation within the workplace, specifically with someone who's, higher up or maybe a boss. Do you have any recommendations for people who are trying to go for a pay raise or move up in some way, shape, or form? Do you have any recommendations as to what the best way to go about that would be? I know there's all different types of circumstances, but in general, is there a way to address those situations? And maybe a better question is there a wrong way to address those situations?
Yeah. So let me answer it first with a free giveaway for your audience.
Okay.
If they go to AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com/guide, GUIDE, you can get the Ultimate Negotiation Guide. It talks about the characteristics of the best negotiators.
Awesome.
And it includes a salary negotiation guide, a general negotiation guide, and a conflict resolution guide. That'll walk you through a systematic approach step by step for how to prepare for those negotiations. So the salary negotiation guide is what people usually
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And so with this, I would suggest approaching it in a sequential type of way. One of the mistakes that people often make in negotiation is they try to do too much too fast. And so if you take somebody on a date and then you say, hey, my name's Kwame, would you like to marry me? It's like, whoa. So that's a lot. Great, but that's a bit much. But a lot of times we kind of ambush people in the corporate world. We just have set one meeting and then we say, hey, I'd like a raise. It's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So it's important to take advantage of what I call mini negotiations. And so you want to kind of stack these negotiations up like dominoes to make sure that you are carrying the least load possible when you're making the ask that you care about. And so what I would do is this, and I'm going to intentionally approach this in a way that'll help you with general negotiations. think about persuasion as in the same way you would think about opening a locked door. You need to get the right key. What people often do is they take a bucket of keys, they go to the door, and they just start trying random keys. And so that's the person who enters into a conversation and they have a bunch of great points that they want to make, or points that they think are great, and they just talk. Yeah. And that's problematic. When I negotiate, my goal is to keep the breakdown of communication about 70-30, where I'm listening 70% of the time and talking only 30%, because that means I'm getting more information. And so keep this metaphor of the keys in mind, because as I'm asking these questions, asking open-ended questions and gathering information, I'm getting a better description of the proper key to open the door. And so during that first conversation, it might just be asking questions geared towards figuring out what the criteria are that this manager is going to use for this salary negotiation. Okay, great. Now I know the criteria. Thanks. Great conversation. Let's chat later. And so maybe in 2 weeks, now you've had the opportunity to gather your accomplishments over the past year and put them together in a way that's perfectly in line with the key that he or she described in the meeting. And so now when you're actually trying to persuade, you're hitting on the major topics that they said were important. And now you can make a better case for yourself in the salary negotiation.
Wow. I love that. That's brilliant. Coming closer to our close of the conversation, Kwame, I want to get to some things that people love to hear about, especially from experts like you, and that is books. A lot of people want to know, what books are you reading right now? What books have impacted you? Is there a book you're reading right now, or one that's impacted your life more than others?
This is the question I hate more than anything. It's like choosing between hundreds of children.
I agree. Who do you love the most? Go ahead.
Yeah, goodness. I would say right now, my favorite book on negotiation, I'll give two. Number one would be Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He was the former FBI lead hostage negotiator, and seeing how he's able to utilize those tactics in the business world is fascinating. And he was on the show, shameless plug, on Negotiate Anything, and he did a great job on that interview. I loved it. I really enjoyed that book. The next one is Negotiation Genius, and that's written by Deepak Malhotra and Max Bazerman. And putting those books side by side is really fascinating, because Malhotra and Bazerman are products of the Harvard program on negotiation, which is one of the most storied programs on negotiation, and really the leaders in interest-based negotiation. So if you're doing it by the book, Negotiation Genius is the one, because it provides an incredible synopsis of the best ideas of all the Harvard negotiation books that I've seen.
Wow.
And then the awesome thing about Chris Voss's book is that he comes from the world of FBI. So he's like, all right, studies are great. And he provides a lot of studies, don't get me wrong, but he's like, I need this stuff to work in the field. People will die if I do this improperly. And so how he uses things like tactical empathy to create rapport with people. And his approach is, when you're talking to him, if you were to negotiate with him, it would seem just as cordial as the Harvard negotiation style, but it's a lot more assertive. Because he says, he's like, and this explains the name of the book. He said, listen, I come from a world where if we have 8 hostages, I can't say, hey, you take 4, I take 4. Let's call it a day.
Oh my goodness.
It doesn't work.
Talk about stress of that job.
He's like, I need to get 100% of what I ask for. I need you to trust me and like me throughout the process. And then at the end of the process, I need you to peaceably go to jail.
Yeah. Wow.
Whoa.
That is crazy.
I like it.
Me too. That's very cool. Wow. That's awesome. So, and just to let everybody know out there, all of this will be in our show notes. So anything that Kwame talks about, we'll put it back there for you. If you could pick one action step, Kwame, for our listeners to take from this call, what would it be?
I would say engage in rejection therapy. You need to practice. You need to practice. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I've been doing this for years and I'm still doing that. So you need to keep your skills sharp, and you need to expose yourself to as much information as possible. Read books, check out the podcast, shameless plug again. But you just need to stay in front of it and continue to expose yourself to negotiation in as many ways as possible.
I love it. I love it. And where can our listeners go to learn more about you and who you are?
Yeah, so check out the podcast, Negotiate Anything, the TED Talk. finding confidence in conflict. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. Everybody that connects gets a message from me personally. It's been a promise that's been harder and harder to keep. But
I bet.
do it. Because it's the interactions with the listeners and people who like the content that makes the content better.
Yeah.
So yeah, please reach out to me and tell me what you want to hear, and we'll try and make it happen. I'll be your
awesome.
appreciation DJ.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. And, I love how presentable you are, Kwame, in the way that you show up and the compassion that you also show up with. You can tell that you are passionate about people growing and learning. And I want to encourage everybody out there, definitely check out Kwame's TED Talk. It's awesome. If you want to be a better speaker, just check out his TED Talk. But above and beyond that, if you want to be a better negotiator and overall a superhuman person who is ever learning and ever growing, go check out his stuff. Kwame, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and just allowing us to come into your world and teaching us on negotiation and how you do it. We truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invite, Matt.
Absolutely. Everybody out there, make it a superhuman day. We'll see you next time. Hey, World Changer. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Do you desire to gain an unfair competitive advantage in life? Do you want more energy, focus, and clarity to add more life to your years and years to your life? I can almost hear your answer coming through my headphones. A resounding yes. If that's the case, you can go to superhumanentrepreneur.com/hack in order to get your free high performance hack guide. That's www.superhumanentrepreneur.com/hack. My mission is to help activate high performance among 10 million entrepreneurs and their families within the next 10 years. If you're loving the content you're hearing, you can partner with me on this mission by simply leaving a review on iTunes. If you do this now, I'd very much appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to giving you even more high performance value next time.